I had everything a man could ever dream of. A beautiful wife who once promised to stand by me through every storm, a house filled with laughter, and a business that carried my name with pride. People looked at me and thought I was lucky. They thought I was untouchable. But life, as I later learned, has a cruel way of showing you that nothing lasts forever. Back then, my days started with the sound of my wife's voice, warm and soft, telling me that she believed in me. I would leave for work with her smile in my mind, and I felt like the world belonged to me. Money came easily. Contracts, deals, opportunities, everything seemed to fall into place. At dinner parties, I was introduced as the man who built his empire from the ground up. My wife would sit beside me, dressed elegantly, her hand resting proudly on mine, as if she too owned a piece of my success. And maybe she did, because in those days I believed that love was as strong as wealth. I believed loyalty was unshakable, but fate has its own plans. The empire I built was not immune to storms. Slowly, the market shifted. A few bad investments turned into losses. What once seemed like endless profit now became endless debt. I worked harder than ever, trying to hold everything together, but cracks had already begun to show. And when cracks appear, people reveal who they really are. I still remember the night it happened. We were sitting in the living room. The lights were dim, and the silence between us was heavier than ever before. She looked at me, not with love, not with sympathy, but with coldness I had never seen in her eyes. She said, "You promised me a life of comfort. You promised me security. If you can't give me that anymore, then what's left between us?" Her words cut deeper than any financial loss. I sat there, stunned, trying to remind her of the years we had spent together, the memories, the laughter, the sacrifices, but she wasn't listening. For her, those things meant nothing without money. And then came the final blow. She packed her bags. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She just left me standing in the doorway of my own house, holding on to the silence of a home that no longer felt like mine. What hurt most wasn't just her leaving, it was the truth that followed. We had been married for years, but we had no children. She had often complained about it, and I thought we would eventually be blessed. But now, when she walked away, she reminded me of that wound. "At least if we had a son, something would remain of this marriage," she said coldly. "But there's nothing at all." I was broken. In one night, I lost not just a wife, but the belief that love could survive hardship. She walked into the arms of another man, wealthier, younger, shining with the success I no longer carried, and I was left in the ruins of what once was my life. The days that followed felt endless. Relatives whispered behind my back. Old friends avoided my calls. Business partners, who once praised me, now turned their eyes away as if failure was contagious. My home was empty. My table was silent. And my heart was drowning in shame. Yet somewhere in that silence, something inside me refused to die. I remembered who I was before the wealth, before the respect, before the titles. I was a fighter. I was a man who had built everything once from nothing. And if I could do it once, maybe, just maybe, I could do it again. But this time I wasn't building for her. I wasn't building to impress anyone. I was building to prove to myself that even after betrayal, even after loss, I still had the strength to rise. And so began the darkest yet most important chapter of my life. I thought losing her was the end of me. For days I sat alone in that empty house, staring at the walls, asking myself where I went wrong. My mind replayed every detail. Her last words, the sound of the suitcase closing, the door shutting behind her. Each replay was like a knife, twisting deeper. But pain is a strange teacher. It breaks you, then quietly whispers lessons you never wanted to hear. And in those long, silent nights, I learned one thing. No one is coming to save you. If you want to rise, you rise on your own. So I picked myself up. I sold the last piece of jewelry she had left behind, not because I wanted the money, but because I wanted to erase her shadow. With that small amount, I rented a modest room in an old neighborhood, the same streets where I once started as a young man. The room was tiny, the walls cracked, and the ceiling fan squeaked as if it too was tired of life. But to me, it was freedom, a place where I could start again. My mornings were no longer about luxury breakfasts or business meetings in five-star hotels. They were about strong tea in a roadside stall, scribbling notes in a worn-out notebook, and calling old contacts who still remembered me. Some refused to talk, some politely declined, but a few still respected me. That respect became my seed. I began working small deals, importing spare parts, connecting traders, arranging shipments. The profits were tiny, almost laughable compared to the empire I once had, but each dollar earned through my own effort tasted sweeter than the millions I had lost. While I was fighting to stand again, word about my ex-wife spread. People whispered that she was now living in luxury with a wealthy businessman, expensive cars, diamond jewelry, vacations abroad. Her pictures painted a life of success. But deep inside, I knew wealth doesn't always mean peace. Still, I pushed the thought aside. My focus was not on her anymore. My focus was on me. Yet every night when I returned to that small room, the silence reminded me of what I didn't have. No wife, no children, no one to share my journey with. That emptiness was heavier than any financial burden. One evening, as I sat by the window watching the city lights flicker in the distance, a thought struck me. What if this is it? What if my life is meant to end alone, forgotten, with nothing but memories of betrayal? But then another voice inside me said, no, this is not the end. This is just the middle of the story. And so I pushed harder. Months turned into years. My business grew, slowly but steadily. From a small trading office, I expanded into logistics, then into exports. One by one, I gathered a team, not employees, but people who believed in me, who trusted my leadership. They worked not just for salaries, but for the vision of building something real, something honest. My name began to resurface in the market. Whispers spread, he's back. The man who once lost everything is rising again. At first, people doubted me. Then they began to watch. And finally, they began to respect me again. But while my business grew, the ghosts of my past never left me. Sometimes late at night, I wondered about her. Did she ever regret leaving? Did she ever think of me? Or was I just a forgotten chapter in her pursuit of wealth? One afternoon, I got my answer. I was walking out of a meeting when I saw her. After almost 25 years, there she was. My heart stopped. She looked older, of course. The diamonds were gone. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed. She was sitting alone at a cafe, staring into her cup of coffee as if the world had abandoned her. I almost walked away, but something pulled me back. I approached her table. She looked up, and for a moment her eyes widened. Shock, shame, regret. It was all there, painted clearly on her face. She whispered my name, as if saying it after decades was painful. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, she spoke. Her voice trembled, not with power like before, but with weakness. She said, he left me. The man I thought would give me the world. He left me for someone younger. I have nothing now. Her words pierced me. This was the same woman who once walked out on me without a tear, who left me broken because I had nothing. And now she was in the same place. I could have laughed. I could have said, you deserve this. I could have reminded her of the night she abandoned me, but I didn't. Instead, I simply looked at her and said, now you know what it feels like. She broke down, right there in front of me, crying into her hands. People stared, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt no anger, no bitterness, only closure. I stood up, left some money on the table for her coffee, and walked away. That day, I realized something powerful. Revenge is not always about destroying others. Sometimes revenge is simply living well. Sometimes revenge is letting them see you rise while they fall into the same pit they pushed you into. When I returned to my office that evening, my team was waiting. They cheered as I announced a new contract that would double our growth. Their smiles, their loyalty, their belief in me. This was my real family, not the wife who left, not the relatives who abandoned me. These people who stood with me when I had nothing were the ones who truly mattered. And for the first time in decades, I felt alive again. Because I had not just rebuilt my empire, I had rebuilt myself. I still remember the silence of those nights after she left. No voice in the house, no laughter, no footsteps, just me and my regrets echoing through the empty walls. For 25 years, I carried the weight of betrayal. My wife had walked away, choosing money and luxury over me. And not just that, she left me when I was at my weakest, when business had collapsed, when every friend had turned into a stranger. She knew there was no son, no heir, no one to stand with me, so she left. At first, I accepted it as fate. I told myself, maybe this is life. Maybe some people are not meant to stay when the storm comes. But as years passed, I saw something that turned my pain into fire. The man she left me for, the so-called rich businessman, was no longer rich. His empire was collapsing under his greed. And she, the woman who once looked me in the eyes and said, you have nothing now, was standing beside a sinking ship. And at that moment I realized this was not just betrayal, this was injustice. I began working again, quietly, slowly, but with more hunger than ever before. I worked days and nights, no complaints, no shortcuts. I wanted to prove one thing, not to her, not to the world, but to myself. I can rise again, and rise I did. My new company, built from the ground with honesty and sweat, started to grow. People remembered me, respected me, trusted me, and while they thought I was just surviving, I was actually preparing for the day when truth and revenge would meet face to face. One afternoon, after 25 long years, fate placed her in front of me again. I was at a business event, standing among directors and investors, when I saw her walk in. The same woman who once left me for a wealthier man, except this time, her eyes carried fear instead of pride. She froze when she saw me. For a moment it felt like time itself had stopped. Is it really you? She whispered. Yes, I said calmly. The same man you once walked away from, but not the same man you left behind. Her husband had lost everything. Every account, every deal, every piece of property. He had drowned himself in debt and alcohol. She, once surrounded by luxury, was now desperate, clinging to whatever respect she could find. And there I was, stronger, wealthier, respected more than ever. That night I sat in my office thinking deeply. Part of me wanted to laugh. to say, now you know how betrayal feels. But another part of me, the wounded husband, the broken man of 25 years ago, wanted something more than laughter. I wanted justice. So I made a decision. I would not just watch her fall. I would make sure she understood the weight of every tear I had shed, every night I had spent alone, every year I had rebuilt my life brick by brick. This was not just about revenge. This was about restoring my dignity. Weeks later, an opportunity came. Her husband's last company was drowning in debts. Investors were pulling out. Banks were knocking at the door. And then a silent buyer appeared. Me. Yes. I bought the very company that had once been my rival, the same company that she had left me for. When the papers were signed, when the deal was complete, I walked into that office not as a broken man, but as the owner. She was there, sitting in the corner, her face pale, her hands shaking. Do you remember this office? I asked her. She nodded, unable to speak. 25 years ago, you chose this over me. You chose money over loyalty. You chose comfort over struggle. And now, this office belongs to me. Her eyes filled with tears. Please, don't do this, she whispered. But I wasn't cruel. I wasn't heartless. I didn't want to destroy her the way she destroyed me. No, my revenge was not about breaking her. It was about showing her that dignity cannot be stolen, respect cannot be bought, and loyalty cannot be replaced with money. So I offered her a seat. Sit down, I said, because today you will listen to the story of the man you thought was finished. I told her everything, how I started again from scratch, how I fought through hunger and loneliness, how I rebuilt my empire without a son, without a wife, without anyone by my side. And when I finished, I leaned forward and said softly, you see, revenge is not about destroying you. It's about proving that you were wrong. You thought I was nothing without you, but I became everything without you. She broke down crying. Her pride shattered into pieces. And in that moment, I felt no hatred, no anger, only peace, because my revenge was complete, not by ruining her, but by rising above her betrayal. That night, when I walked out of the building, I looked at the sky and whispered, justice has been served. Because real revenge is not when they lose. Real revenge is when you win without them. The night I walked away from that building, I felt a silence I hadn't felt in decades. It was not the silence of loneliness anymore. It was the silence of victory. For 25 years, I carried pain like a shadow. Every smile I forced, every tear I swallowed, every night I spent in darkness. All of it led to this day, a day when I could look at the woman who betrayed me and say, I did not need you to rise again. But even then, I did not hate her. No, hate was too small for the man I had become. I only pitied her. Pity for the choices she made. Pity for the life she threw away. In the weeks that followed, people started talking. Did you hear? He bought the same company that once destroyed him. He faced betrayal, but look at him now. And suddenly my story was no longer just mine. It became an example for friends, for businessmen, for young dreamers. People looked at me and said, if he could survive betrayal and still rise, so can we. That was the moment I realized. My revenge had grown bigger than me. It wasn't just against her. It was against every betrayal, every injustice, every voice that once said, you can't. One evening, I was sitting in my office, staring at the skyline of the city I had once lost and then conquered again. My assistant walked in and said, Sir, she is here again. She wants to meet you. For a moment I thought of refusing, but then I said, let her in. She walked in, her steps hesitant, her face pale. She looked nothing like the proud woman of the past. She sat down quietly, and with trembling lips, she said, I was wrong. I chose wealth over love, pride over loyalty, and now I have nothing, not even dignity. Please forgive me, sir. I looked at her, and memories of the past flashed in my mind. The nights of betrayal, the empty rooms, the loneliness. But then I remembered the empire I had rebuilt, the respect I had regained, the man I had become. So I smiled softly and said, I already forgave you long ago, but forgiveness doesn't mean returning. You lost me the day you walked away, and now I am no longer yours to lose. She cried, but I did not, because my heart was no longer broken. It was healed. And that, my friends, was the final chapter of my revenge. A revenge that was not about destroying her life, but about building mine. A revenge that proved dignity is stronger than betrayal, patience is stronger than time, and justice always comes, even if it takes 25 years. So if you are listening to my story today, remember this. If someone betrays you, don't waste your life in anger. Don't drown yourself in hatred. Instead, rise, work, build, and one day your success will speak louder than your pain. Because the sweetest revenge is not making them fall, it's standing tall without them. If you felt my journey, my pain, and my rise, then don't forget to like this story, subscribe for more, and share it with those who need hope. Your support is the fuel that keeps these stories alive.